Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, comply with Bridezilla or leave, okay? Only work the posted hours. Who told you to do it this way? A bad attitude works both ways. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Comply with Bridezilla or leave, okay? My friend, Gemma, tells me about how she and an entire group of bridesmaids left a wedding after their friend dared them to. So this all happened a few weeks ago. A longtime friend of Gemma's group was getting married in another state, but the day of the wedding she suddenly had a problem with one girl who wore glasses, which she didn't have an issue with beforehand. The glasses girl told her she wouldn't wear them during the vows and pictures, but the Bridezilla didn't want her wearing them at all and was screaming at her to not put them on for the rest of the day. Obviously she couldn't do that since she needs to. See? The argument got more heated until Bridezilla gave her the ultimatum to take them off and keep them off or leave. This is when Gemma and the other bridesmaids stepped in, told Bridezilla she was out of line, and that they would all leave if she forced the girl with glasses to leave. Bridezilla called their bluff and, being maids of their word, the bridesmaids left the wedding and decided to celebrate and eat at a restaurant before they head back home. Bridezilla called them several times after they left, telling them that she didn't care about the glasses anymore and begged them to come back to the venue, but they not only refused but also chose to end the friendship with her altogether. Gemma said that the wedding proceeded as follows, just minus the bridesmaids and a few awkward stares, because everyone heard the Bridezilla screaming from earlier. Gemma told me that the Bridezilla has always been like this, throwing a tantrum when she doesn't get her way, and that the meltdown at the wedding was just the last straw for them. Personally, I think she's got a monk's patience if she put up with her for that long. Only work the posted hours. Many years ago, I worked at a place with lots of arcade games and pizza, similar to Chuck E. Cheese. I was hired to do maintenance, repair, and setup of these arcade machines. There was already someone there doing this, but they were never allowed to work more than 40 hours a week, and the place was open 7 days a week, 9 hours a day, 63 hours a week, not including prep for opening and cleanup after closing. At the end of my first shift, I was told that I was also expected to help with cleanup since everyone that worked close had to help with cleanup. All my shifts were close shifts. This meant I had less time before my morning classes than I expected when taking the job, but a few extra bucks was valuable to a starving college student. Fast forward about 2 months. New manager, fresh out of high school, gets his big boy boots on and starts making rules. First rule, a schedule with everyone's hours for the next week will be posted by Friday morning. Second rule, you must clock in before your posted shift start time, but not more than 5 minutes before your shift. Third rule, you must clock out at the end of your posted shift end time, no more than 5 minutes after. At the end of my first shift after these rules were created, I clocked out and left everyone else to do the cleanup. To be clear, it's not like I was getting time and a half overtime or anything. All I expected was to be paid my normal rate, and they didn't want to pay even that, so I clocked out and left. At the beginning of my next shift, they were angry. They expected me to clock out and then work over an hour for free, every single shift. These were only 5-hour shifts too. I refused. The next week, they posted a new schedule with my shift ending an hour later. Since everyone saw the list, they all got mad. I guess they were all just fine with wage theft until one person refused. The next week, everyone had an extra hour on their shifts. At this point, his wage theft scheme had failed. Fast forward a couple weeks, and this new manager doesn't come in on Thursday. He doesn't come in until Monday. No schedule is posted. Monday afternoon, I go in to get my check and say, "See you next week." I'm told my shift started half an hour ago. I say I made plans since I wasn't on the schedule. No schedule means I couldn't be on it. The manager pointed to a schedule posted on the wall, printed just hours before, after some of the shifts on it had already started. I thanked him for posting next week's schedule early and started to leave. Then I was threatened with termination, and I kept walking. Came back a week later and talked with the daytime guy doing the same job. He said it was a bad week, many machines were down, and he was walking around with like $100 in tokens because he was spending much of his time giving refunds, to the point he didn't have enough uninterrupted time to make any repairs. He was also keeping a roll of masking tape with him to tape over the coin slots as the machines failed. This meant a lot more use on the remaining machines, which started to show it quickly. I go to clock in and was told I had been fired. I smiled and walked out. Spoke with the daytime guy a while later. Apparently they never filled my position. People with mechanical and electrical knowledge willing to work minimum wage are rare. Instead, he was getting 14 hours a week and time and a half overtime, with a base pay almost twice what I was getting. This extra expense came out of the department budget, which also paid for replacement parts. Even before this, it was never enough to buy enough parts. This from the department budget thing was from the same manager. He didn't want normal payroll to go up. For a while, basically everyone was carrying around $20 in tokens to give refunds, but all the comps were unacceptable to the manager, so now only the sales desk could issue refunds, which meant ordering pizza took forever and many people just left angry rather than waiting for a refund. Most machines had tape over the token slots. This backup at the sales desk didn't last long, as few people were coming and no one was booking parties anymore. Other than staff, it was basically empty. It didn't even smell like pizza anymore. With no customers, the daytime guy finally had time to make repairs, but didn't have the parts to do most repairs. As far as I know, that manager stayed there until the place went under 8 months after I was fired for not working a shift that his own rules said I could not work. Edit. A few people asked, so here are a few more details. 1. There was a previous manager that wasn't great but wasn't trying wage theft or any of that mess. Generally things worked smoothly under her and there was a long waiting list for booking parties. She was let go as soon as this guy graduated. I do not know why, but I assume nepotism. I could be wrong about that. Maybe she was doing something that got her fired, but if that was the case, then there were at least 10 people that were more qualified for the job. I never met the owner or even knew her name. 2. It was entirely possible to clock in and out more than 5 minutes outside of your scheduled shift. You just wouldn't be paid for that time. Everyone that stayed late clocked out late, and I'm pretty sure none of them got paid for that extra time. I know I clocked out late a few times and didn't get paid for the extra time. 3. I worked closing shift on the Sunday before the Monday that I walked out. The previous week's schedule was still posted at that time and I had not been scheduled to work on Monday or Tuesday of that week. I even asked the woman running the show that night about the new schedule and she didn't know, but assumed we were just following the previous schedule. No one called me after the new schedule was posted. I was in the middle of a school-related project and only stopped by to get my check, deposit it, and get back to the project. If he hadn't tried to force me to work that day, I probably would have worked the schedule from the previous week, but him being a bully made me follow his rules to the letter. For, even if I was in the wrong to take the week off, he should have been painfully aware what happened when I was gone for a whole week. Firing me when I was about to start working on cleaning up the mess he started was next level incompetence. 5. The daytime guy was no moron, but he also didn't really understand a lot of the machines. When I started, I had been repairing electronics as a part-time job/hobby for years, and finding and replacing a single bad part on a $500 plus arcade board was usually pretty easy for me. Sometimes the repairs looked insane because I had to work with what I could find at Radio Shack, but they worked. Daytime guy was great with mechanical stuff, but when I started, the soldering iron was in a dust-covered box because he had basically never touched it. He didn't even have the correct type of solder. He had stuff meant for plumbing repairs. When I left, cheap board level repairs turned into expensive board replacements that there was no budget for. Before I got there, this wasn't a big issue because previous management always allocated extra money rather than having a machine just remain dead. New manager did not do this, not sure why, but if I had to guess, it's because he didn't want to explain why these expensive board replacements stopped and started again perfectly in line with my time there. Someone else was obviously watching the books, or else he wouldn't have played games with how to pay daytime guy all that overtime. Who told you to do it this way? Being a travel nurse in the operating room has its benefits: the pay, the ability to take time off between assignments, and the bits of malicious compliance that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Been at this hospital for 2 months. I've worked with this particular surgeon a handful of times, but it's always been the same procedure, so I know what he wants for every step of the case. I'm about to start applying skin prep, another layer of antimicrobial security to prevent post-op infection, to where the surgeon is going to operate. He always wants the armpit, front shoulder, and breast/chest of the specific side prepped. We're operating on the patient's right side. They're already asleep, and their right arm is padded and secured on an arm board. Before I start prepping, the scrub tech immediately says you need to undo their arm from the board so that you can prep the whole arm. I tell them no, the surgeon wants it prepped this way, the arm stays on the board. This scrub tech hadn't done this case with this doctor in quite some time either, but they still decided to explain how the whole arm should be prepped for this procedure. I ignored them. I begin my prep. Less than a minute later, the charge nurse comes in to log into a portable X-ray device. Us travelers don't often get credentials for those, and the scrub tech decides to ask the charge nurse how the surgical site should be prepped for this case, right in front of me. The charge nurse backs up the scrub tech and tells me I should be prepping the whole arm in addition to the sites that I mentioned earlier. I protested, but Dr. X doesn't want that. He always wants the same areas prepped and draped accordingly. The charge nurse wasn't budging, and they demand I unfasten the arm and do it their way instead. I sigh and say okay. QMC. I prep the whole arm and am holding it in my sterile glove while waiting for the drapes and stockinette to be applied. All of a sudden, the most glorious thing happens. The surgeon arrives with the charge nurse still in the room. "Did you prep the whole arm?" he asked me. "Yep." "Why did you do that? You've been here 2 months, how do you not remember the prep by now?" "I was told to prep it this way." "By who? Who told you to do it this way?" The surgeon was pissed due to this delay. As a traveler, I've learned to take the heat for making small mistakes, and I was contemplating taking the fall for this so that we could just move on with the rest of the day. But before I could speak, my charge nurse was actually humble and admitted that they told me to prep the whole arm. The doc looked at me. "Did you tell them how I prefer it to be done?" "I did." The doc turned back to the charge nurse and proceeded to lambaste her for delaying the case. The scrub tech just stared blankly at the wall. But I didn't look or listen, I just stood there enjoying the moment with the biggest shit-eating grin under my mask. It's a nice day when someone else proves you were right. Needless to say, I didn't renew my contract at that hospital. A bad attitude works both ways. Most jobs I've worked back or skip lunch at work every now and again to make sure that things get done. No point getting petty over a few minutes here or there, right? One previous manager was a bit blind to my short lunches were long days, but was really double down on my start times. I was 6 minutes late because of an unexpected traffic jam. Supervisor didn't like this at all, got called to his desk and told we started 9 a.m. not 9:06 a.m. I'm easygoing, and despite not liking being talked down to, would have forgotten about this as he was technically correct, the best kind of correct. The next week he decided it would be a good idea for me to work late 5 minutes each day because the change to process he wrote would stop last-minute customers being inconvenienced. I told him we finish at 5 p.m. not 5:05 p.m. He didn't like this at all and told me I had a bad attitude. When I asked him how this was any different to his attitude to getting in early, he told me he was the boss and that's why. What really pissed him off was asking him to please put the new process that involved me staying late in an email, which for some reason, possibly because he knew I'd be forwarding it to HR, this didn't happen and I began to work until 5 p.m. with a full lunch every day. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.